Hello everybody, welcome back to Ghostly French Toast. And today we're talking about these red wolves, these silly goofy guys, the red wolves of Radagon. And as always, this video is by the one, the only Ghostly French Toast. So enough dawdling around, we're gonna dive on in quite well. Basics. It's an optional fight in the base game. There's about a decent bit of them. There's technically, you may be wondering, oh, there's probably just one or two of them. No, there's actually three different versions. There's Lesser, Greater, and Champion, which I think is a very interesting thing. Where even though they're very, very similar, besides like little tiny minute details, there's basically the same thing, and that's basically the big thing of Elden Ring. Most bosses have tiny little variations. Putrid avatars. More rot. Dragon, we're gonna make it breathe magic fire instead of regular fire. It's so silly goofy. Uses sorceries and incantation. Unlike basically every enemy, they use a variety of sorceries and incantations where you have this sorcery-like sword that can come out of the mouth of the red wolf, while also being able to use different sorceries like glintstone, basically glintstone shard, all that. It's a very interesting dynamic where there's only one other character in the game that can do that. No boss so well. Even though there are plenty in the game, there's no basically greater version of these bosses that don't have a soul, so not like Regal Ancestor Spirit kind of thing. Radagon. So, as the name implies, these red wolves somehow relate to Radagon, and it's kind of silly. They both got red hair, which is, I think, is a very important thing to the dynamic. So, let's talk about Radagon real quick, because I know I've already done a video, so this is just kind of a brief recovery. So, second half America, even though they're kind of one and the same, even though I personally think they're two separate beings that kind of got fused together, like Trina and Mikola. Very controlling. So we know how after basically Radagon came into being and they fused together, Radagon basically kind of took control of everything. And America kind of just got pushed aside after the Elden Ring because he was shattered, because Radagon was like, I'm going to fix things. I'm going to revolutionize this shit, modernize. Rome wasn't built in a day type thing, you know. Wanted to, quote unquote, fix the Golden Order, make it more perfect, mend it back to what it was. Trusted the two fingers as kind of like guidance. And with what the true fingers basically did were these watchful communicators for each of the demigods. And technically America had her own two fingers, but they're these kind of watchful entities to communicate the greater will's conscious and ideas, even though the greater will's most likely dead. Mastered both sorceries and incantations, so you kind of see this similarity aspect between the Red Wolves and Radagon. Red Wolf locations, and you may be wondering, Ghostly French Toast, why in God's green earth are we talking about the locations of these Red Wolves? And I think we don't really know, because we don't have basically any description of these Red Wolves. They're just kind of there. We don't really know anything really about them, so we have to take that as their thing. So these Red Wolf locations are many around the map. As stated, there's multiple different versions of these Red Wolves. And they're just kind of just oddly located. Like, basically, there's one down under Noxtella, which doesn't really make sense. Why would a Red Wolf be there? There's one in near Volcano Manor. Why would it be there? There's one near Ronnie's two fingers, of all places. And of course, there's the main one basically guarding Renala, a very important person to Radagon. You may be starting to, the puzzle pieces, the gears may be turning. I may be not the thinker, but I am the thunker. They're basically kind of hidden in the background. Besides Renala's one, all these are kind of like out of the way. Like, the only way to like really access them is just stumbling upon them. Like, one's at the backest, farthest part of a hidden dungeon that you have to go around a mountain to get to. Noxtella is fucking Noxtella. It's underground, the fuck? And it's kind of hidden behind trees and bushes, and it's the only way you're gonna find it is you're gonna light the candles. They're just kind of just hidden, and they appear out of nowhere, like with near Ronnie's fingers, it just kind of appears into existence. Uses both sorceries and incantations, an important thing to take note of, because even though it primarily uses sorceries, the sword that it uses is most likely incantation based. Similar to the Golden Order Greatsword, it seems very that magical golden energy, or Radagon energy. It's got that red flow to it, you know? One of the Radagon's most iconic things is his red hair. Around important locations to demigods, as stated before, we see these red wolves basically scattered around in the backgrounds, but they're near important things like Ronnie's two fingers. They're near fucking Rykard. They're near Noxtella, which is an important place to Ronnie's questline, and probably the most important demigod besides Mikla to the story of Elden Ring, because she has her own ending, I personally think. Where Ronnie's basically trying to overthrow the Golden Order, so there's a bunch of red wolves along her path. And of course you have Renala, Radagon's former quote-unquote love interest, but I personally think Radagon was just kind of using this girl. Like, bro was going to college to get more knowledge, while she was going to Jupiter to get more super type shit, you know? The wolves in Elden Ring, and to talk about, without talking, because we don't know that much about wolves. We know about the shadows and how they watch over these demigods. You have Blythe, you have Malekith. They watch over these demigods as kind of like these protectors. Marika kind of basically used Malekith in a way to make sure I personally think I don't really think Marika liked her kids after Godwin's death. And because I do believe she played a part in Knife of Black Knives. But she used Malekith as kind of this like, hey, you guys are my kids, right? But I love my kids, but if you try to overthrow me, I literally got death right there. So it's kind of crazy to think about. Bear Missoula's statue depicts 3 of them protecting and watching over a child, which I think, that was very edited poorly by me, I apologize. And this is probably one of the bigger mysteries in Elden Ring. Who is this? There's a lot of depictions of this being the Glum-Eyed Queen. And the reason this would be important, because you're like, oh, why are we talking about Glum-Eyed Queen in a Marika and Radagon, Red Wolf Radagon video? It's important to take note of because there's a lot of connections between Marika and the Glum-Eyed Queen being one and the same, similar to Mikla, because Mikla and Saint Trina, Radagon, Marika, so it's kind of crazy, but there's 3 different wolves, and they're protecting over this child, and that's something they're watching over the children, and I think that's a very important thing to take note of. As always, Blythe protects Ronnie, so that's something to take note of. And even though we have no description, this is my personal little headcanon, my little theory. The Red Wolf's main purpose watches over the demigods. What do I mean by that? They're Radagon's eyes of the lands between. So Radagon wants to take control of the land between. He wants to reinvent it, but you have all these demigods doing demigod shit and like trying to fucking eat the world and like overthrow the Golden Order. So it's like this may not be working, right? So I think these red wolves are kind of like Radagon's like surveillance system. We know they have a connection with the Misbegotten, all that. They have some horns on. They have this bright red fur, and when you think of bright red, you think of Radagon. And as the name implies, they are red wolves of Radagon. They came somehow from Radagon. And they have similar incantations to summon a golden sword, like the Golden Order Greatsword that Renala gifted Radagon. So I think it's a very interesting thing to think about, where they're in the background, they're kind of hidden. They watch Ronnie with the Fingerslayer blade, and I feel like that's an important thing to take note of, because they're all at important locations that kind of like I would personally watch over. If I was Radagon, I would watch over the Carians. They would probably be pissed that they lost 2 wars, even though like their wife was like, hey, I love Radagon. Their wife's kind of insane. They locked her up in a library. So I would send a wolf to watch over Renala, yes, but I would also send a wolf to basically kind of make sure like they're in check. You have Rykard. You have one basically guarding Rykard's one of a Bloodhound Knight's spirit, but that spirit served Rykard, and you're already close enough to Rykard just to make sure like, hey, that kind of thing. We gotta be safe. Rykard and his trusted Bloodhound Knight watches over Renala. So basically the summary, TLDR, these red wolves are basically Radagon's eyes and ears of the lands between, because Radagon can't be everywhere. He has to stay there trying to mend the Elden Ring itself.